Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. Let me ask you something first. Have you ever been corrected on your grammar and felt a little judged and annoyed, probably? Maybe someone told you it's whom as opposed to who.
You know what? It's not important. What's important is that we're having a baby, and it doesn't matter who came on to who.
Whom? That's right.
Or insisted that literally cannot mean figuratively, which by the way it does. Even Charles Dickens would agree with me on that one.
You're always correcting people. I never noticed it before, and now it's literally driving me crazy.
Figuratively. Maybe so, but it's no worse than you using the word literally in every other sentence.
I literally want to rip your head off.
You mean figuratively?
No, I literally mean literally.
Or maybe you've heard that American pronunciation of news as news is just wrong. Lazy. Proof that TV is corrupting the youth. But here's the thing. Who actually decides on what's right in language? Why do we care so much? Today we're diving into one of the biggest linguistic battles of all time. Prescriptivism versus descriptivism. Should we try to preserve language the way it is, or let it evolve naturally? And why do people get so emotional about it? Spoiler, language rules have never ever been just about clarity. They're about power, identity, and sometimes nationalism. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's get into it. All right, let's start with prescriptivism. The idea that there's a correct way to speak and write, and that we need to protect the purity of language. Sounds logical, right? But historically, it's been about a lot more than just grammar. Think about France. The French government literally has a team of language police, the Académie Française, that tries to keep French pure from outside influence. They hate English borrowings like le weekend or email, and they actively invent French alternatives. Fun fact, nobody actually uses those words. And it's not just French. Spanish has the Real Academia Española. Arabic has its own academies, and even German has had institutions policing language. But what's the real reason behind all this? It's identity. Historically, when a country or a group feels that its culture is under threat of some kind, language becomes a battlefield. The idea is, if we protect our language, we protect who we are. And that's why these rules often focus on keeping foreign influences out. Now, sometimes the quote-unquote threat isn't from outside, but from within. Take England. Centuries ago, the British elite saw regional accents and dialects as corrupting the language. So they promoted a standard form of English, the one we now call received pronunciation. Basically, the fancy British accent people associate with old BBC broadcasts. This happens in every language. Certain dialects get labeled as better or proper, while others get dismissed as lazy, uneducated, or even immoral. Which brings me back to the really odd example of news versus news. There's this Canadian journalist, Russell Smith, who wrote about pronunciation, and he pointed out that saying news for news, the American way, isn't wrong. It's just a variant, one of the many, many variants out there. But after he published that, readers just lost their minds. They called news lazy, blamed American television, said it was proof that our language is deteriorating into slang, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. And then, this is where it gets wild, one reader actually said, "Well-spoken British English saved us from Nazism." I mean, what? That's what I mean about language rules being emotional. People don't just think certain pronunciations sound better, they go on to attach values to them. Proper language equals discipline, intelligence, and tradition. Meanwhile, slang or non-standard pronunciation equals laziness, carelessness and decline. But here's the thing, this is how every generation thinks about language. Go back to the 1800s, and people were panicking about contractions like don't and can't ruining English. Go back even further, and Shakespeare was inventing words left and right, 1,700 of them to be exact, including critic, assassination, and eyeball. But sure, slay is the word that's really going to destroy civilization. So, what's the alternative to prescriptivism? Descriptivism, from the word describe. Descriptivists believe that language is alive. Linguists today argue that there's no such thing as a wrong word. Only words that are more or less common in certain settings. Like, do you say gonna instead of going to? Do you say literally when you mean figuratively? Have you used they as a singular pronoun yet? Because if so, if any one of those three is true for you, then you're speaking modern English. Even Samuel Johnson, the guy who wrote one of the first great English dictionaries, once tried to fix English, but later admitted the pen must comply with the tongue. Or in modern English, people are just going to say what they want to say. Even Noah Webster, the American dictionary guy, tried to separate American English from British English by changing spellings like, the American version of color without the U, the American version of theater with TR at the end. Why was he doing that? Because he thought a national language meant a national identity, and it made sense at the time. So even descriptivists sometimes pursue prescriptive goals. After all this, where do you stand? Are you a prescriptivist wanting to preserve standards? Are you a descriptivist embracing change? Are you somewhere in between? Do you kind of wobble? Do you correct people's grammar? Do you get sort of hung up about yours? Or do you think we should just let language evolve and let people talk how they do talk? Let me know, send me a DM, leave a comment, or just yell into the void. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and share it with your fellow language nerds. I'll see you next time. This was Beyond the Accent, Speak Without Limits with Carrie. I'll talk to you soon.